My name is Mina Murphy. I own Sunflower Sake, which is where we are right now. It's a tiny little 250 square foot sake specialty store. I also sell online and I teach classes, I do education, I do promotion. And all of this started when I was in the wine industry, really. So long time ago, 10 years ago, I was in insurance and I did mostly account management. And I really loved the side of that was like consulting, helping people and building relationships. And then at some point, I felt like I wanted to pursue something I actually felt passionate about. So I was in love with food, in love with wine and that whole culture, geography, history. So got into wine, and then from there, eventually in COVID, pivoted to sake. I love both equally. I'm still a major wine lover. And in fact, in Japan, whenever I visit, I go to wineries as well. They have a really cool wine culture. But sake felt like an opportunity to support an industry that's really struggling. Sake is at an all-time low in market share in Japan, and it's a really wonderful historic and traditional industry as well that really deserves to be supported, and more people should know about it. So opening up Sunflower was a way for me to connect with that, to have an excuse to go to Japan on the regular, and also to promote a wonderful, richly important historic beverage that deserves everyone's attention. What is your top piece of advice for small business owners just starting out? I feel not qualified to give any advice whatsoever, but in my personal experience, having started as a pop-up first in a shipping container in an alley in winter with outside seating only in Portland winter, that was incredibly difficult, and it did teach me some lessons that I carried on here. Also, before I started, I consulted with a lot of other small wine shops and small businesses in Portland, and they were kind enough to tell me to keep it small, especially in COVID era. There was a sense that things were going to go down again. There was a lot of being unsure. And at the time, I was potentially looking at a Main Street shop location that needed full build out, that was 600 square feet. But even that would have required some employees and major funds to open. And so thankfully, I was convinced to not take on, $140,000 of debt, which was the estimated build out. And I was encouraged to find something smaller. So I held out and I found this place, which is 250 square feet in an old building, not in a very walkable neighborhood, but it is a neighborhood with a lot of character. And so people come here for experiences. So my top piece of advice is to keep it small. I can afford the rent on 250 square feet, even if I have a bad month, which is going to happen. And also, I don't need to take out a huge loan. If I need to grow, and I have needed to grow, I've been able to call on affordable month-to-month local cold storage facilities that are in this immediate area. So if I need more inventory, I need to flex into a slightly different business model, there's resources around me that I can pick up on to do that without completely breaking the bank and putting myself in a really tough position when things get quiet. As part of being a small business owner, I wake up every day extremely excited about certain projects. I say certain projects because there's some things that I hate doing and I'm really terrible at them. And I have a to-do list that's a mile long. But there's so many projects on that list that are positively thrilling to work with. So for instance, one of the things that I do is I run a sake club. It's subscription-based, quarterly and monthly club. And that is my excuse to get to paint watercolor art, which is another one of my passions, cook and practice food pairings, and even draw things like comics and write up long, way too detailed backstories about certain sake bottles. That's the kind of thing that I would do in my free time, willingly, unpaid, just let me do it. And so I've been able to structure the business where that is a part of my everyday work. That's not something that would be easy to get in most other work. So I think that the best part of being a small business owner is that you can build it to be whatever you need it to be to bring you joy. Have you heard of Merchant Maverick? I have never heard of Merchant Maverick. When you guys reached out to me, I looked a little bit at your website, tried to kind of figure out what it is that you do, and I'm definitely curious to keep looking. Certainly, I think the biggest issue for small business owners is lack of time. being able to just find the time to handle the thing that's immediately in front of you versus planning strategically for 6 months down the line. Now that I'm 2 years into my business, I feel like I'm just starting to think 6 months ahead. And I also run a festival, a sake festival annually. The first year, I started planning it a month and a half ahead of time. The second year, I pretty much started planning it 3 months ahead of time. And this year we're finally at like 7 months ahead of time. So I'm slowly learning to take a step back. And part of that is also learning how to operate my business better. And for the very first time in my life, Googling what the fuck SEO is, excuse my language, which it feels like these are important things, but you know, maybe you guys are part of the path to discovery. One challenge you're facing and how can the community help? You know, like any small business owner, weathering the ups and downs of a busy season versus a quiet season can be extremely difficult. And for small business owners, we not only have to be proficient in what we want to do, which is mostly the day-to-day interaction and sharing things that we love and selling things to people that we think they will love, but you also have to be proficient in marketing, in website management, in business, finance, all of this stuff. And for most of us who got into it, this is not the background that we came from. And we're in it because we are passionate and we care about what we do, not because we are like big behemoths that have this huge amount of resources behind us. And I think one of the reasons why I love Portland and why I wanted to move here and open up a small business here is because it felt like Portlanders do support local businesses more than the San Francisco Bay Area where I grew up, more than LA where I spent many years. People actively seek out small businesses when they're like, I need teeth. Okay, I'm gonna go to a local spot to get it. I'm not gonna order it on Amazon. So it feels like Portland was always a really great place to be able to get that support from the community. But what I didn't expect when I first opened the shop was how difficult it's been to even make people aware that I exist. And it feels like in order to do that, I need so much mastery over so many different fields. I am not a video format kind of person. If you look at my Instagram profile, I have 0 photos of myself pretty much. I'm not the kind of person who likes that sort of FaceTime, but I know that that's what social platforms want to see, and that's what's successful. So balancing the two of those has been incredibly difficult. With that said, how can the community help? Just by rebroadcasting. When you are looking around at the small businesses that you follow on Instagram or on email, even if you don't necessarily want to go to an event or you don't have time to go to an event, but you think that maybe some of your friends would be interested, reposting it is so huge. It makes a world of difference. A couple hundred reposts, which was great, but even a couple dozen is enough to at least get people who would be curious to be aware that you're out there, so that even if they don't go to that event, they know that like in the future they can Google me and be like, oh, I think there was a sake shop in Portland, they were doing that thing. So then they know that I exist even in an abstract sense, which is so huge and goes a really, really long way. So I'm pretty lucky that here in Portland, we were the home of the largest sake festival in the United States until its closure in COVID. It was actually run by a team of event planners that were based in a different state entirely. They were just like into sake and they must have gotten involved with this somehow. So it's actually gone from a pretty massive, well-produced event with, I would say, not a lot of heart and soul, to once they stepped away and decided to end the event, I felt like there was room for a new sake festival in the Portland area that would be really homegrown, involve like all of our extended community members, really give back to the community. So I just suspected that there was already interest because of the number of people, over 1,000, who attended PDX Sake Fest in the past. And getting that cluster of people who are already into sake aware that there is a new festival might also make them aware that there is a new sake shop and community space where you can learn and gather and experience sake on an everyday basis if you want, has been super, super helpful. But also running Fuyu Fest has been unbelievably rewarding in a way that I never expected, because although it makes my margins essentially non-existent, we donate almost all of our profits, 20% of our ticket revenues, which ends up looking like 60% of profits because we also pay our volunteers and we also take good care of the people who come to work the event. Giving that back to the community hasn't necessarily paid off monetarily because we donate to a elderly lunch program organization that serves primarily the Japanese American community of seniors and puts on really low cost lunches at a local church. But it's secular, and donating to that program has made me feel deeply connected to this community that I wasn't raised in, and I am not ever gonna say that I'm officially a part of, but who form the backbone of what sake culture is about, which is community and coming together and appreciating all of the incredible cultural heritage that comes from Japanese Americans and Japanese people. So yeah, I would say that that's the biggest benefit of events. Our sake festival is called Fuyu Fest. Fuyu means winter in Japanese. And my idea was to have a winter sake festival so that we could really dive into all of the fun, cozy winter sake activities, the idea of having hot sake in an onsen or enjoying hot sake in general and having it with winter foods. So we have it historically in January, but fighting with dry January has been extremely tough. So we moved it to February. So we're going to be having it February 22nd of the coming year, 2025. We're finally graduating from a really, really ramshackle kind of setup here in this building where we're just trying to squeeze ourselves in and make all the budget work to actually having a kind of more official event at The Red, which is a fantastic event space here in Portland. And in fact, The Red is owned by the Eco Trust, which is, they are themselves a nonprofit. So everything that we spend on that facility is actually going back to the community as well. So that's really, really amazing and it feels fantastic. And we have some extremely fun stuff planned and guests coming from Japan and a whole bunch of sake to taste that will hopefully blow your mind. So I use Shopify for my point of sale. At the very beginning, my big question between different vendors for point of sale was who has the best reviews for customer service. Just knowing that if something went wrong, I need to be able to call someone right now and be heard and have the problem solved. Turns out I've almost never used that. So there would potentially be an opportunity for me to revisit it. But that was the most important thing from the beginning is I would rather spend a little more or maybe not have something super optimized in order to be able to have really, really reliable customer service. And back when I started, they had the better reputation. I do e-commerce sales, so I sell throughout the US, and Shopify is able to consolidate my inventory between 2 different locations, so our offsite cold storage and onsite, and also, of course, synchronize any POS sales here versus online sales. So it's able to manage a lot of that. Unfortunately, the process is made a bit complicated because alcohol is really difficult to ship and there's some really special rules that apply to it. Plus it's incredibly heavy. So and it's low margin. So it's not the easiest product to work with. I can't use the onboard shipping platform and discounts that are available through Shopify because they are not optimized or set for alcohol. So unfortunately, we can't take advantage of that. But as far as I know, there's no other systems that take that into account. I do. So I use Gusto. Basically, when I was looking at my options, I do not have time to manage a lot of things. So having come from insurance in the past, I was actually pretty familiar with PEOs as a system for managing employees. And while I did want to keep Molly employed in-house, I was looking for a suite of HR offerings that was just plug and play. And after working for me for a year part-time, we're ready to bring Molly on full-time. And so at her 1-year anniversary, we'll be bringing her on full-time, which is super exciting. And Gusto also has benefits that they offer through their same system that are pretty darn good. So I'm really, really happy with that. They've made it very simple. They send me reminder emails when I'm not doing things on time, and I really appreciate that, and they answer calls. So I've been very, very happy with Gusto so far.